Okay, so we finally gotten to this video. I'm sorry for the wait, but I hope it's worth it for you guys. I know some of you have been waiting for it for a while. All right, like I said, we finally got here. Before I even jump into anything about the video, like, comment, subscribe, notification bell, share with your friends, family, enemies, everyone that you want to share this with, do it. But most importantly, like, notification bell. I do videos weekly. Also, Instagram and Twitter. Mainly on Instagram, I do behind the scenes stuff and all my memes and all that good stuff where you get to know more about myself and my personal life to a degree. None of y'all need to know me that well on the internet. So back to the video. Who are we talking about? Beta Ray Bill. We are actually talking about Beta Ray Bill. It's been a while. It's definitely been a while, so I'm sorry for you guys that had to wait for it, but it is here and it's gonna be dope as hell. I've done my research. Let's get into it. So before we actually get into how to introduce him, let's talk about who he is and the powers that he's got. So first things first,
I'm the realist.
the powers that he's got really as a core superhero, which every super basically has, well, within the genre anyway. Superhuman speed, superhuman strength, durability, which is all very useful things, but most importantly, he's got longevity. And longevity is what you want in pretty much all of your life, if you know what I'm talking about. And if we're going to talk about his weapon of choice, Stormbreaker, you'll recognize the name Stormbreaker because it's actually made an appearance in Infinity War and in Endgame. It's the hammer axe type weapon that Thor gets. After Mjolnir has been destroyed, he gets this hammer axe type thing and he calls it Stormbreaker. More on that later. Through Stormbreaker, Beta Ray Bill actually has access to flight. I'm not sure if that's just through Stormbreaker, but from what I've gathered in my research and so on, that seems to be the case. He also gets granted the powers of electricity manipulation and overall weather manipulation. So as I've already said, Stormbreaker has been noted down in the MCU already. However, that's not the only time that we do see an instance that Beta Ray Bill could be introduced in the MCU or even being hinted at in the MCU. If you look back to Thor Ragnarok, when we get to see the planet when we're zooming in on where all of the champions live, on the champions tower, you do see a face that looks a bit horse-like. I believe it's on the left side of the building, maybe at the bottom or the top, I don't know. But you see a horse-looking face. That is either Beta Ray Bill or a hint of his race that they exist in this world. With that being said, let's take a little bit of a look into the comic book origin of Beta Ray Bill. He's an alien from the planet Corbin, which makes him a Corbinite. Pretty straightforward stuff. Whenever I say Corbin, it reminds me of Kobin from Fifth Element. I mean, it's not really that similar, but it just reminds me of that. Just take with that what you will. He's actually a warrior, which is really good because it kind of makes him very similar to Thor in that manner. And his design is actually based around looking evil. He's got this horse skeletal face and he's meant to look evil and strike fear but be the good guy. People are meant to be scared of him. There's even stories based on like little kids being scared of him when he's trying to save them because of how freakishly scary that he looks. Anyway, back to his origin. He is a warrior and he had his life force, mind, consciousness transferred into the body of a genetically bionically restructured creature. This creature is equine, I don't know. Basically looks like a horse, a zebra, donkey, these kinds of creatures. It looks like that, and it's a hybrid of the cyborg and the human, or well, Corbinite of this planet. And that's kind of where his core powers come from, being super strong and super speed and all that good stuff. And that all good longevity, you know what I'm saying? Within his origin, after all of that happens, he actually ends up fighting Thor. Now that's really dope because that's really great for the MCU intro. More on that later. But again, the fight itself is pretty much over who should wield Mjolnir and being able to wield it and so on. I'm not even gonna try and touch that because there's a lot that goes on with that because a number of people have wielded Mjolnir in the comics and even in the MCU, there's a lot going on. That's a topic for a whole nother day. And to be fair, the fight does actually end up being a draw. Now, I can't remember the exact stipulations of what happened during the fight, after fight, and all that jazz, but it's a draw. Now, the bad thing is that Beta Ray Bill did not get Mjolnir, but Odin, that's right, Thor's dad actually gave him his own hammer, axe type thing, which is Stormbreaker, as mentioned prior. And speaking of Stormbreaker again, what's dope about Stormbreaker is that it pretty much has the same powers that Mjolnir has, such as the lightning, flight, electricity, all that good jazz. Well, not electricity, weather, but you know what I mean. It's really cool. But also, for those that didn't know, Thor actually had an alter ego, depending on which timeline you're looking at, and everything in between. You know how comics go, where he would be Donald Blake. So it could be either that he transformed into this person or it was just his alter ego, but all the same, he could do it. How he did this was by tapping the hammer or the umbrella or the cane or whatever he had. He'd tap it on the ground, then he'd become Thor. Beta Ray Bill actually has the same thing, but instead of being Donald Blake or whatever he goes back to being a normal Carbonite. You see this type of action in Thor Ragnarok when he's walking with Loki and he taps the umbrella that he's holding on the ground, tap tap, becomes superpowered Thor. Because he's actually always Thor and he's always superpowered unless he's unworthy. So he's an awkward kind of character sometimes, hard to write sometimes because of that, but oh well. What's also really dope about Beta Ray Bill is actually has a battle spaceship called Scuttlebutt. Any way to get Scuttlebutt into a movie and be able to say Scuttlebutt on screen, anyone should try and do. Okay, now that we know some of his backstory in the comics and we know that he actually has been hinted at in some way or another in the MCU, how do we introduce him into the MCU proper? Well, something that I didn't actually mention before that is actually part of Beta Ray Bill's backstory is that Surtur, the same one that is actually in Thor Ragnarok from the beginning of the movie, and actually at the end of the movie, the one that destroys, what's the name of that place? Jesus. With that, we can actually use that as a starting point for Beta Ray Bill as someone who thought it was his place to destroy Surtur, the same person that destroyed his homeworld. Now, don't get me wrong, that can be considered a little generic, but it works really well within the world that the MCU has created. There's a lot of people that something has happened in their life and they're triggered to do something. A lot of them have been Tony's fault and a lot of them have become villains, but this way it has nothing to do with Tony, and they actually become a hero. So with that, one, you've got a way to introduce Beta Ray Bill into the movie because he wants to destroy Surtur. Two, you actually introduce him as an angle for Thor to be involved because Thor has taken that chance away from him. Whilst he didn't directly destroy him, he put in place for him to be destroyed, or at least a never-ending combat between Hela and Surtur. And that works really well within his warrior's mentality that he thinks it's his place to really avenge his people and his planet by doing this. And with Thor taking that away, you create that great introduction of them fighting at the beginning and then they become friends. And speaking of friends, you've got love. And the type of friends that they are would be Thunder. And to be fair, that kind of relates really well to the comics because they do eventually become really good friends. And when Thor is unable to perform his Thor duties because he doesn't have that longevity, he does. But still, in case he's unable to do it for any reason, he kind of fills in for a spot even on the Avengers team, among other things. Now with Bill, we actually don't need an Origins movie. I mean, to be fair, we've had a lot of Origins movies in the MCU. The best thing to do, I think, for this character is actually introduce him in the new Thor movie, Love and Thunder. In fact, a good story arc to introduce Beta Ray Bill with would be Blood and Thunder, so it coincides with the title as well. Slightly different, maybe not as family friendly. That's why they've called it Love and Thunder, but still, that's a great story to introduce him because Thor actually goes crazy with the Warrior's Madness. Now, the Warrior's Madness is literally as it sounds. It's a warrior, and he actually gets really powerful, but he's crazy and he's kind of out of control. And then you can have Beta Ray Bill trying to help him come from that after they have their initial fight and so on, they become friends. You could even have a kind of a Death of Superman kind of feel. Now this may get a bit more in depth for some of the other people that are watching my channel, but Death of Superman is a thing that happened back in the 80s or 90s. I can't remember the exact time scale, but it's a story arc where Superman had died and then you had 4 people come out of nowhere that wanted to be or needed to place in Superman. One of them was Superboy, who's hella dope. And then you've got Steel, hella dope. And then you've got the Eradicator, and then you've got Cyborg Superman that came out to replace Superman in some way or another. And they all just became Superman. And with Natalie Portman returning, and it's been stated that she is going to be Jane Foster again, and that will be female Thor, I'm down with that. You could end up with a situation where you've got Thor in the madness. Instead of dying or being knocked out or something like that, you've got then Beta Ray Bill and Jane Foster's Thor fighting to be the new Thor, sort of. And what's dope about that is that you could actually have Jane Foster as Mighty Thor, which is what her name is in the comics. Well, she's Thor, but her comic book title was Mighty Thor during that run, and it was really cool. And I think having these two on the screen together would be a great contrast. You'd have this horse-looking creature that is literally just scary as hell. Then you've got Natalie Portman as Mighty Thor. I really want that. That'd be so dope. So what can Bill actually bring to the MCU? So number one, he looks badass. Like, don't get me wrong, his normal gear and everything like that is very similar to Thor, but they would jazz it up for the MCU. MCU do a really great job of adapting characters from the comic books to the cinema, the big silver screen. It looks really good. I think he could do a great job with him. Not only like with his gear, but his face. He looks evil as hell, and like I said before, he is an evil looking character that is the superhero. Kids were scared of him when he tried to save them. That's how scary he looks. You bring that, he's got this skeletal face, it's so dope. You get that, you know what he looks like? He looks like a trestle or whatever. You know those horses, those dead horses, or the people who've seen death in Harry Potter? That's what he looks like, but cooler because it's not Harry Potter. 2. Much like I mentioned in my video about bringing Nova to the MCU, he has a great relationship with Thor. So Nova and Charlotte have this great bromance that goes on in the comics, and that can translate very well to the MCU. Thor and Beta Ray Bill definitely could have that. It'd be a bit more regal in how it goes on, but it would still be dope to have that kind of interaction. And speaking of Nova, they're actually a team together with, well, by there I mean Nova and Beta Ray Bill are actually a team called the Annihilators, which is with Cosmo the Space Dog, and that's dope. Give me any chance to get that. Also, he's really good friends with Kid Nova. I say friends, he's kind of like a bigger brother type thing because he respects like Kid Nova, Sam Alexander. And that's really dope to have that kind of interaction. You could end up probably having a very similar Iron Man, Tony Stark, and Spider-Man type thing, but on a much smaller scale because they don't have that kind of connection. I feel that the MCU drove for Spider-Man and Iron Man to have. And finally, 3. He's actually a fan favorite. He'd be something that's incredibly fresh for the MCU. I feel like he'd really fill that void that Captain America left, that selfless hero that just wants to do right by his people and wants to save them. I think what I really feel that's probably the best way to introduce him, not so much to introduce him, but the character that he should be is a really great blend of Thor and Captain America. He's got that kind of regal cockiness, but he's also still incredibly humble, and he's for the people, and he's just there to help at the end of the day. So that's the end of the video, dudes. What do you think Beta Ray Bill should do in the movies? How do you think he should be introduced? What is your feelings on Beta Ray Bill overall? Should he be introduced? Who else would you like to see in the MCU in the upcoming phases 4 and 5, even 6 going on? What do you think will be happening within the MCU going forward? Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe on my videos. Hit that notification bell because I do videos weekly. Don't forget Instagram and Twitter where you get the behind the scenes videos and everything like that. Dudes, there's gonna be videos in this area here. Subscription, like I said before. Dudes, I still don't have my sign off yet, so peace.